I'd like to invite up Margaret, one of our board members, who's a CMO of Herald in Austria, for the next session.
Thank you, Kimberly. Yeah, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Bob Barnes for the next presentation. Bob is an expert in the field. He has 20 years of experience working with SMB, and he founded 2 companies on his own. And today he will put a spotlight on retaining customers. I think this is a highly interesting topic for us because we are so focused on providing leads to our customers to acquire new customers on their own. And so I think it's very valuable to think about how we can help our customers to retain their customers. So Bob, it's yours.
Thank you so much. I suddenly have to use the restroom. It could be the Red Bull I just had. It's my first ever, and I'm not really sure what it's going to do. I'm kidding. But I had this experience a couple of months ago. I had a strange smell in my home that I couldn't figure out. And it was a fairly pungent smell, and it would happen anytime the furnace would turn on. The smell would, and it got worse and worse and worse over probably a 4-week period. I couldn't figure it out, so I called everybody that I knew, and eventually I needed somebody to come clean the ductwork because I figured that some rodent had found its way into my heating system and was decaying and producing this horrible smell. So I used one of the marketplaces in the US called Thumbtack, looked for a duct cleaner, and contacted one of the 2 that they recommended. He came out and did not find the rodent, but he did charge me for the duct cleaning, which is fine. And I thought, hey, this guy would be really great as a customer of ours. We focus on retention marketing, right? We want to get his customers back. And the very next day, I could not remember the name of the company. I just couldn't come up with it. He hadn't left me anything, and it's been probably close to 3 months, and I still don't know the name of that company. And I started thinking back, I've had this experience, a dozen times. I don't remember who I used. So I want to talk a little bit about customer engagement and what it means. In our research, we found that small businesses will self-report to us that 80% of their customers come back. I'm all word of mouth. I don't really need that much help. My customers just come back. But their data shows that only 20% of their customers are coming back. There's a huge perception gap here. They don't see reality. They see what they want to believe, which is that they're doing a great job, their customers are coming back, their business is great, and some point in time, if they're not successful at getting their customers back, they're one of the 15 that close their doors, right? So why is this happening? Well, primarily, search has evolved, right? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, it was quite simple. The small business received a visit by their sales rep from their local directory company. They looked at what they thought happened last year with their ad, and they renewed their ad and maybe increased it a little bit, right? Today, there are thousands of ways that they can attract new customers. The other thing that happened with the directories was that it was kind of built-in engagement, right? I mean, I don't know how it is here, but I presume that it's similar to when I was growing up in the US. We had our phone book, and when we needed a service provider, we looked up the plumbing section, and we found one. However we picked that, I don't know. But we would circle his name if he did a good job, and if he did a bad job, we would kind of cross him out. And we would get a new phone book every year, and we would just keep the old one because it had all of our notes in it. And so that was kind of a built-in retention marketing campaign right in the directories. But today, that's not how it happens. The consumer takes the path of least resistance. which happens to be their cell phone. And right in front of them, on demand, is a list of plumbers that they can choose from. And they may look at the reviews. In this particular case, I searched for a plumber in Dublin. And at the top, I have a guy who has 52 reviews. Looks pretty good. The next guy has 2 reviews. 5 stars, but 2 reviews. And the third plumber has 3.5 stars with 2 reviews. Who would you choose? Well, I would probably choose the guy on top with 52 5-star reviews. And that's how consumers make purchase decisions today. It's very different than the directory, the days of the print directory. So I know this is not the exact same number in the particular country that you may be operating in, but in the US, 68% of small business customers, adults, who are consuming these products and services are now what we would call Gen X and millennials, right? So how does a 60-year-old plumber engage with customer base that sits on their couch and texts each other instead of talking? How does he engage with a customer who operates primarily from his mobile phone? And all of these products and services, all these interaction methods, right? SMS, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, email, Pinterest, YouTube, all of these engagement vehicles, these means of communication, how does this guy manage all of that? Well, the answer is he doesn't. He's just relying on his old systems and processes. So here's his retention strategy. Prayer. I mean, it doesn't really work for retention, right? It's just not a great strategy. And yet he kind of sits there and says, I think they're coming back, I hope they're coming back, but I'm just going to keep buying more leads, right? So I want to play a game. Does anybody have 10-euro bill? Anybody? Okay, can you bring it to me? Euro is ideal. Oh. We have a winner. We have a winner, and it's me. I am taking the small business's money. So here are the rules. You're going to give me 10 euros. I'm going to give you a great return by the end of the presentation. It's a great game, right? And we do this every day with our customers. Thank you. But I promise this will be the most profitable presentation that you'll have all day. You just have to trust me. It's working for a ton of other people. I don't really know if it's working. And frankly, we wouldn't be in business if this didn't work, right? We have thousands of customers this is working for. Has anybody ever told that story in the sales team, right? We're telling that story to the small business. So they say that 68% of statistics are made up on the spot. This is one of them. We estimate that for enterprise businesses, large businesses, about 20% of their marketing dollars go toward retention, 80% toward kind of awareness, customer acquisition, and so forth. And small business, in our experience working with over 100,000 small businesses in the US, far less than 5% of their spend is going toward retention marketing. And this is a problem. But why is this happening? We're going to get into like the mechanics of retention and why it's such a hard problem for a small business. But engagement with the customer is really the core problem. They're not engaging with their customer base. They're not on that journey with their customer. So let's talk a little bit about what engagement is. Engagement is like, hey, welcome to my company. How do we do today? Hey, will you tell your friends about us? We're having an event. We'd like you to be there, right? It's time for your next service. We haven't seen you in a long time. Hey, here's a promotion to try to get you back. This is engagement with the customer base. And it's not happening very well with small businesses. Yet enterprises are actually engaging in most of these efforts. So as a directory or a person that's selling to small business, it's really important that we're not a stop along the way, right? We need to be on the journey with the customer, our customer being the merchant, the small business. We can't just be a stop along the way, taking a toll, and never seeing that small business again once they kind of figure out that maybe our product's not working for them. So let's talk a little bit about customer journey. I mean, I was interested, this is like the 5th time I've seen a slide like this today, right? Almost every presentation has had a slide that talks about awareness, making the purchase decision, purchasing the product or service, and then how retention and kind of loyalty and advocacy is kind of a gap. And so enterprise has the people, the resources, the budget, they have tools, they have really great marketing solutions, they have things like Salesforce and Pardot and Marketo, they have all these resources to kind of facilitate this customer journey, and they're curating that experience for the customer. They're staying with that customer for the whole life cycle of that customer, but the small business is basically buying a new customer and then letting them go. And they just repeat that process. So without having retention and advocacy, loyalty, the small business just continues to churn customers. I don't know about you guys, but I bet there's probably somebody in this room who has a customer churn problem or a product churn problem. Like, it's a big problem, and you're not solving it for the small business. If you were solving it for the small business, they wouldn't be churning out of your products and services. So we think this is kind of the next big revenue bucket. This is where directories and people that are selling to small business can make a huge impact, not only in their own business, but in the life cycle of their small business customer. And again, if you solve that problem, you're going to be able to retain your customers better. They don't have the budget, they don't have the tools, they don't have the expertise, so we have to kind of deliver that to them. And as we all talked about today, they're not using the tools. It doesn't matter how awesome the tool is that we deliver to the small business, they're not going to use it. So how do we solve this for them? Well, it has to be bundled with services. And what we're learning is that more and more it has to be services. And then we have to report back to them. We talked about in the last session, or maybe it was a couple of sessions ago, how often are people logging into your dashboard? It just doesn't happen that much. And the reality is, we have awesome dashboards, and we create a PDF and we email it to our customer of the dashboard, because it's the only way we can get them to consume it. So why? Everybody's selling top of the funnel products. It's all about new customers, new lead gen. It's print, it's internet yellow pages, it's a website, it's PPC, it's SEO, it's social, it's reviews, all of these things. And on the other side of the field, we have the data that it generates. But those two things aren't connected. There's nothing to tell the small business if any of those top of the funnel services or products are really working for that customer. They have no way of seeing the attribution value of any one of those products or services. Sure, we report clicks and calls and impressions, but what does that really mean? They're kind of BS metrics. They're metrics that are kind of designed to keep the customer just happy enough that they don't cancel, right? So how do we change that equation? We have to aggregate the data. We have to bring the customer data and the transaction data together with the marketing data. Now when we can take their financial software and their invoices, and maybe they don't have financial software, but if we can get their invoices and we can tie that to their marketing spend, now we can tell a story about revenue and adding revenue to that kind of revenue over cost equation. But the problem is that we're really only adding that first piece of revenue. What if we could add the full lifetime value of that customer? What if we knew every single transaction that customer did after they became a customer? Okay, so that becomes really important. Now the equation starts to make a little bit more sense. Now we can say, hey, well, this customer has spent over their lifetime $5,000 with you, Mr. Small Business, and you only spent $200 to acquire that customer. That's a pretty good equation. I like that result. But right now, all you're telling me is clicks and calls and impressions, and that doesn't mean anything to me. I'm a plumber. I don't even know what a click is. You're talking, I get it, but it doesn't mean anything to me. So now that we have that data, we can report it back to the small business. Now I can tell the small business, hey, this is how many jobs that pay-per-click campaign generated for you. I could also tell him how much revenue it generated. But that may not be effective because the revenue may not be enough, right? We did a couple of tests in the US with a couple of large directories. We found that in most cases, their customers were losing money on their ad spend. They were actually in the hole. Not revenue, but profit. So if they spent $70,000 on advertising with the directory, they were making $220,000 of revenue, but they only had a 20% gross margin on their product. So they're losing money. They'd be better off turning it off. Now, we're not going to tell that story to the customer, right? We want to tell a story of like, hey, how do we change the equation? How do we add more revenue to the equation? Retention is one of the ways that we do that. So let's talk about a quick case study. This is a plumber. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road customer for us in the US. He's got, I think he has 6 or 8 trucks. So a decent company, but not huge and not a one-truck guy, right? We looked at his customer base. We looked at his spend. We looked at kind of retention marketing that we were providing for him. We found out that his single kind of one-time visit customers, $623 average invoice, $19 in profit margin on those customers. That's 77% of his business produces almost $0 in profit margin. Not a great equation. Tons of risk associated with that 77% of his business, right? Now, if we engage those customers via email, text, social media to get those customers to come back, we found out that his revenue went from $623 to $1,414, and his profit dollars grew from $19 to $307, a 16x multiple in profit, getting a customer to come back one time. That's powerful. Imagine being able to tell that story to your customer instead of clicks and calls. That's meaningful. Hey, by the way, you get them back a third time, that bucket of customers is worth almost 50 times as much profit. Here's this customer over last 12 months, right? On average, I think he's about 20, I don't remember the average, but somewhere around $15,000 to $16,000 of revenue that was recovered by engaging his one-time customers and getting them to come back. And you can see it varies, but it's a pretty consistent story. This guy, in the past 30 days, saw 28 jobs as a result of engagement. He saw $22,000 of revenue and the average order value of almost $800, which is more than double his average order value from all of his other sources combined. We see this almost across the board with customers. It's very rare to see a different picture than this. Incidentally, his repeat business started at 37%. If you look at all time, of all customers who he had ever serviced, only 37% of them had ever come back. Looking back, I think it was 6 years. But his last 30 days, while he's been engaging his customers through the Freshline platform, 51% repeat business. And remember the margin equation? He's making a ton of money on every single one of those jobs. So, how does this impact a small business? Well, it's an ROI equation. His repeat business is going up, his reputation is going up, his referrals are going up, his revenue is going up, his profit's going up, the lifetime value of his customer is going up, and ultimately that's impacting the enterprise value of his company. And that's what he's really after, more profit and more enterprise value. We also looked at his search campaigns. For him to acquire the same, I think it was $197,000 of revenue we drove him last year. He spent $300 a month to acquire that, which was $3,600 a year. He would have spent $6,823 to acquire the same number of customers through a paid search campaign. So the key takeaway here is that adding retention to your offerings costs a fraction of what that customer's paying overall and can double the revenue value that we're bringing to that customer. If if you look at all the products and services that we might provide as a directory. So this is how much do you think would be fair to give back on this €10 investment? What? You guys play this game all day. I mean, what's fair? 20. So you think the small business is happy if they give you €10 and we give them 20 back? Is that fair? Sure. Yeah? Anybody else? That's awesome. That's awesome? Okay. So on average, our customer gives us $10, but the euro is pretty close to the dollar. And we give them back $300 in value every single day. So here's your $10 investment plus 300. I told you it would be the most profitable presentation of the day. Ultimately, that's what we want to get to. We want to get to the point where that's the story that we're telling our small business customers. And it's actually within reach. As we start aggregating their attribution and their customer data, which our platform does, we display that back, and ultimately we're not going to give them all the data up front until we know that it's solid, right? We want to improve our product mix as a directory or as a company that's selling services to the small business to the point that we can then report back value like that. But that's the average value from engagement marketing. Questions?
Thank you, Bob. I think my €10 were a great investment.
Oh, yeah.
So you absolutely proved it was a great investment. Thank you. Yeah, so questions. So you may have questions.
I have a comment because we had a conversation about this that was like about an hour long before this presentation a couple months ago. And what I thought was really interesting is we know, as CEOs, as operation managers, we know how much it costs to acquire a new customer for us, and we never really and we say, oh, repeat is better, okay? But we never actually do it with our customers, and that was the discussion. I can't remember who fixed my furnace or cleaned my windows. And I think this really is a really interesting new revenue bucket, okay? It kind of goes into reputation management, it goes into retention. And I think about the presentation yesterday, and I'm trying to think, was it Sigridor? I think your presentation on the market research that you're doing, the new company. Does this anything related to that at all? Are you working on retention? Because you kind of touched on that a little bit yesterday.
Well, obviously, one of the most important products we are offering in our marketing research is customer service and customer retention analysis and insights. But we're not at that step of converting that into an action. So, yeah.
But it's on the way. Yeah, good. No, I just think it's a really interesting observation. Questions?
Hi, great presentation. One thing that I think I'm seeing as a theme of consistently is how we get closer to the transaction with regards to our customers or SMBs. You mentioned there, and I understand the equation, and the thing I don't understand or might need some help with is how on earth we get that transaction information from small businesses.
I was hoping that would be the question. We get it for you. So our platform enables you to aggregate. One of the things that we're doing, we just bought a company called Dasheroo. Dasheroo was a small business dashboard company that was designed to enable any marketer or business owner to come in and connect to their various data sources. On average, they're using 6 to 12 apps that produce data about their business. Marketing, financial, accounting software, et cetera, social posting software. All of those are creating data, but nothing's integrating that data together to tell a story that could drive an actionable insight, right? That now I can take action on and drive value back to the business. So this platform, the reason why we acquired it is because we were working on very similar problems. What they had done a really great job at is creating a kind of a productization of the data aggregation and the display of that data. So in our world, we think about data tells the story of your business, right? If you don't have the data, you don't really know how your business is performing. So imagine if we could take all of those invoices, all of that marketing data, we can combine those into one centralized place that drives actionable insights. So now we know we have kind of data aggregation, data utilization, and then the display, right, visualization of that data. And so this platform that we acquired enables us to very rapidly deploy integrations with third-party data sources to aggregate that data, standardize the data, and create a kind of an open platform that enables us to, it rather enables our partners to utilize that data. So on top of that data may sit our engagement app that FreshLime has. On top of that data may sit a referral or a reviews product, right? The data becomes the platform. And whoever can kind of centralize that data can build an app on top of that data to kind of leverage the insights and the story that data tells about the small business. And so what we're trying to deliver to these directories and small businesses is access to an aggregation of their own data. And then obviously you get some benefit from looking at data across segments too, right? So we know, for example, that if a plumber's in a home or a heating and air contractor's in a home in, November in a cold climate, that their chance of getting a big order, a big repair job, or a new install of a furnace when it breaks goes up exponentially. So what does that tell us? It tells us that, man, we better get those preventative maintenance, right? Those service calls done in September and October so that when the furnace breaks, that guy gets the job, not whoever the customer pulled up on their phone. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You came a long way to visit us. So we're going to break for lunch, and just a little bit after lunch, we're going to start out with a subject that's really important to all of us that are in the European community. We're going to have the panel on some of the legislation that's happening around data. That'll be directly after lunch. And then we have a pretty packed afternoon with some great sessions, and we're going to end this afternoon with our startup session. And we have 4 really cool startups. So, and they're 4 startups who are looking for partners, and I like them. They're really cool. So come this afternoon. And this afternoon, you have to be here this afternoon because I'm not going to tell you how to get to the dinner unless you're here this afternoon. So, okay? So, guten Appetit.